My name is Dr. Aaliyah Vance, and I am 35 years old. This Christmas, while I was saving a life in the trauma unit, my parents looked at my 14-year-old daughter and told her there was no room for her at the table. They forced her out into the freezing snow to wait for an Uber, just so my sister's husband and his wealthy parents could have her seat. They thought I was just a lowly night shift medical worker who couldn't do anything about it. They had no idea that the roof over their heads, the floor beneath their feet, and the food on their plates were all paid for by me. They woke up the next morning expecting leftovers. Instead, they got an eviction notice. Before I tell you how I dismantled their entire lives in 24 hours, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. And if you have ever been the family scapegoat who was actually holding everything together, hit that like button and subscribe. You are going to enjoy this. The story began at 9:05 p.m. on Christmas night. The air in Trauma Bay 1 at Mercy General Hospital was thick with the metallic smell of blood and the sharp chemical scent of antiseptic. I was not holding a turkey leg or a glass of wine. I was holding a scalpel. My hands were gloved in latex and covered in the blood of a 19-year-old boy who had come off his motorcycle on the icy highway. As the lead trauma surgeon, the room belonged to me. Nurses, residents, and anesthesiologists moved only when I told them to move. I was calm. I was precise. In this room, I was God. But to my family, I was just Aaliyah, the girl who worked nights at the hospital and probably changed bedpans for a living. I finished the suture, tying off the last stitch with a practiced flick of my wrist. I checked the monitors. Stable. I stripped off my gloves, dropping them into the biohazard bin with a wet slap. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the bone-deep exhaustion that comes after a 12-hour double shift. I walked out of the bay and toward the scrub sinks. All I wanted was 5 minutes of silence before I had to drive to my parents' house in the suburbs. I had promised my daughter Zoe I would be there for dessert. That was when my personal phone buzzed in my locker. It wasn't a text. It was a call. I frowned. My family knew never to call me when I was on shift unless someone was dying. I grabbed the phone. The caller ID said Zoe. My heart hammered against my ribs, a different rhythm than the surgical focus I had just held. I slid the bar to answer. Zoe, I asked, my voice sharp, are you okay? There was silence on the other end, then a sound that broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. A wet, ragged gasp for air. My 14-year-old daughter, the strongest, smartest girl I knew, was sobbing. Mom. Her voice was small, trembling and terrified. Mom, can you come get me, please? Get me? I'm cold. The hospital sounds the beeping monitors, the intercom pages, the squeak of rubber shoes on linoleum. All of it faded away. My world narrowed down to that phone. Where are you? I demanded, grabbing my coat. Are you at Grandma's house? Did something happen? I'm outside, she cried, her voice hitching. I'm standing by the mailbox. It's snowing really hard, Mom. I called an Uber, but it says 20 minutes. Please. Outside. It was 12 degrees in Chicago. Why are you outside, Zoe? Did you get into a fight with Aunt Jasmine? No, she whispered. Grandma made me leave. I stopped walking. I stood frozen in the middle of the hallway, a nurse walking past me with a chart giving me a wide berth. Say that again? I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Grandma Linda Zoe sobbed. She and Grandpa said I had to leave. Uncle Brad and Aunt Jasmine arrived late. They brought Brad's parents, the investors. I gripped the phone so hard the metal case dug into my palm. Brad, my brother-in-law, the white financial genius who had never actually held a steady job. So I asked, what does that have to do with you standing in the snow? There weren't enough chairs. Mom, Zoe said, the tears flowing freely now. They set the table for 8, but with Brad's parents there were 9 people. We were already sitting down. Grandma came over to me. She tapped me on the shoulder. She said, Zoe, honey, you're a big girl now. You understand, we need this seat for Mr. and Mrs. Sterling. They are very important guests. Brad needs to impress them. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the Chicago winter. My mother had looked at my child, her own granddaughter, and told her she was disposable. "She told you to stand up," I asked. "She told me to go home," Zoe cried. "She said go wait in the other room or just go home. There is no room for you at the table." And then Brad laughed. He said, "Yeah, kid, go find a kid's table somewhere." The adults are talking business. Everyone laughed, Mom, even Grandpa. So I just grabbed my coat and I left. I closed my eyes. I could see it perfectly. My parents' house, the warm glow of the fireplace, the smell of the expensive roast beef I had paid for, the crystal glasses I had bought them for their anniversary filled with wine, and in the middle of it all, my daughter being humiliated, being treated like an unwanted stray dog because my sister's husband needed to impress his parents. They chose Brad over my daughter. Again. "Are you still at the mailbox?" I asked, walking rapidly toward the exit. "Yes," she shivered. "Go back to the porch, Zoe. Do not go inside. Just stand under the awning so you are out of the wind. I am leaving right now. I will be there in 20 minutes. I hung up the phone. I walked out of the hospital into the biting wind. The snow was coming down in thick, heavy sheets. I got into my car, a sensible 3-year-old SUV that I kept solely because it didn't look like money. I gripped the steering wheel. My family thought I was a nurse, or maybe a medical technician. They never asked. They just knew I worked at the hospital. I wore scrubs, and I picked up extra shifts on holidays. To them, that meant I was struggling. It meant I was blue-collar. It meant I was beneath them. My sister Jasmine, on the other hand, was an influencer. She spent her days taking photos of latte art and posing in clothes she returned the next day. And she had married Brad. Brad, who called himself a wealth management consultant, but mostly just managed to spend his parents' money and look down on anyone with melanin in their skin, including the family he married into. My parents, Robert and Linda, worshipped them. They worshipped Brad's whiteness, his perceived status, his potential. They saw Jasmine and Brad as the golden couple, the future of the Vance family legacy. And me? I was just Aaliyah, the single mom, the one who worked too much, the one who was reliable but boring, the one they called when the boiler broke or the tax bill arrived but ignored when the champagne was popped. I merged onto the highway, driving faster than I should have on the slick roads. They thought I was poor. They thought I lived in a small apartment downtown because that was all I could afford. They didn't know about the penthouse I owned 3 blocks away from the hospital. They didn't know that my salary as the head of trauma surgery was 7 figures. They didn't know that my investment portfolio, managed by my own private firm, Phoenix Rising LLC, was worth more than Brad's parents' entire estate. And the biggest secret of all, they didn't know about the house. 5 years ago, my father, Robert, had gambled away his pension. They were facing foreclosure. They were going to be on the street. I couldn't let that happen, but I also knew my father's pride. If I had walked in and handed him a check, he would have resented me. He would have hated being saved by the daughter he considered a failure. So I bought the house. I set up an LLC, bought the mortgage from the bank, and let them stay. I told them I knew a guy, a property manager, who was willing to let them rent it for a fraction of the cost as long as they took care of it. They believed it because they wanted to believe it. For 5 years, they had been living in my house, paying a comical $300 a month in rent that barely covered the taxes, thinking they were getting over on some faceless landlord. They were living in my house, eating my food, and they had just kicked my daughter out into the snow. I pulled into the driveway of the large colonial house in Oak Park. It looked picture perfect. Wreaths in every window, golden lights wrapping the columns. It looked like a Hallmark movie. I saw Zoe immediately. She was huddled in the corner of the porch, her arms wrapped around herself, shaking. She looked so small. I parked the car and jumped out, not even bothering to close the door. I ran up the steps and pulled her into my arms. Her face was ice cold. Her tears were freezing on her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered against my coat. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." "You didn't cause trouble, baby," I said, smoothing her hair. "You didn't do anything wrong." Inside the house, I could hear laughter. I could hear Brad's loud, booming voice telling a story. I could hear the clink of silverware. They were having a wonderful time. They hadn't even noticed she was gone. Or worse, they had noticed and they were relieved. I took the keys to my car and pressed them into Zoe's hand. "Get in the car, Zoe. Turn on the heat. Lock the doors." "What are you going to do?" she asked, her eyes wide. "I'm going to go say Merry Christmas," I said. I watched her get into the car and lock the door. Then I turned back to the house. I didn't knock. I didn't ring the bell. I used the key that I had kept on my ring for 5 years, the key that belonged to the owner. I unlocked the door and stepped into the warmth of the foyer. The smell of sage and roasted turkey was overwhelming. It smelled like the home I grew up in, the home I had saved. I walked past the living room where the tree was piled high with gifts. Gifts for Jasmine, gifts for Brad, a mountain of toys for their son, Braden the golden grandchild. There was nothing under the tree for Zoe. I walked into the dining room. The scene was exactly as Zoe had described. The table was set with the fine china. My mother sat at one end, my father at the other. Jasmine and Brad were on one side, and across from them sat an older white couple, Brad's parents looking polished and expensive. Brad was standing up holding a wine glass. It was a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon I had given my father for his birthday last month. A $200 bottle. To family. Brad toasted his face flushed with wine. And to new investments. To family, everyone chorused. I stood in the archway still wearing my long winter coat over my scrubs. I didn't say a word. I just watched them. My mother was the first to see me. She froze her glass halfway to her mouth. Her eyes widened, not with happiness, but with annoyance. "Aaliyah," she said, her voice sharp, "what are you doing here? You're letting all the cold air in." The table went silent. Brad turned around, his smile slipping into a sneer. "Oh, look who it is," he said. "The help has arrived. Did you finish emptying bedpans early tonight, Aaliyah?" His parents chuckled politely. Jasmine rolled her eyes, not even looking up from her phone. I didn't answer him. I looked at the empty chair at the far end of the table, a folding chair that had been squeezed in. And then I looked at the chair where Brad's mother was sitting. It was Zoe's usual spot. "Where is my daughter?" I asked. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. My father Robert wiped his mouth with a napkin. He looked irritated. "She went home, Aaliyah. We told her to call you. It was getting crowded in here." "Crowded," I repeated. "You sent a 14-year-old girl out into a blizzard because it was crowded." "Now, Aaliyah, don't start drama." "My mother," Linda said, standing up and rushing over to me, trying to block me from entering the room fully. She lowered her voice to a hiss. "These are important people, Aaliyah. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling are investing in Brad's new venture. We couldn't just have kids running around cluttering up the table. Zoe is old enough to understand." "Cluttering up the table," I said. "That's what my daughter is to you." "Clutter? She's not family like Braden is," Brad said from the table, not even bothering to lower his voice. "I mean, look at her. She doesn't exactly fit the aesthetic we're going for tonight, does she?" He gestured vaguely at his parents at the white tablecloth at the scene he was trying to curate. He meant she wasn't white. He meant she wasn't rich. He meant she wasn't him. I looked at Brad. I looked at the wine he was drinking. I looked at the house he was sitting in. I stepped around my mother. I walked right up to the table. "You kicked my child out," I said to my father. Robert sighed, slamming his hand on the table. "Enough, Aaliyah. You're embarrassing us. Yes, we told her to leave. Brad needs this. The family needs this. Your little job at the hospital pays the bills barely, but Brad is building an empire. We have to prioritize the future. Now, if you want a plate, you can take one to the kitchen, but do not disturb this dinner. Take a plate to the kitchen, like a servant, in my own house." I looked at them one last time. I memorized their faces, the arrogance of Brad, the selfishness of Jasmine, the betrayal of my parents. "Okay," I said. I nodded slowly. "You're right, Dad. Priorities." I turned around. "Where are you going?" my mother called out, confused by my sudden compliance. "I'm going home," I said without looking back. "Enjoy your dinner. It will be the last one you ever eat here." I walked out the front door into the snow. I got into the car where Zoe was waiting. She looked at me, her eyes red. "Did you yell at them?" she asked. "No," I said, putting the car in drive. "Yelling is free, Zoe. What I'm going to do is going to cost them everything." I drove away from the house, leaving the warm glow of the windows behind. The silent strategist had awoken, and the first strike was already planned. It was 8 in the morning on the day after Christmas. The sky over Chicago was a bruised purple color, heavy with more snow. Most people were sleeping in nursing hangovers or playing with new toys. I was sitting in my home office on the 45th floor of the Meridian Tower. The view from my floor-to-ceiling windows was breathtaking, looking out over the frozen lake. It was quiet here, peaceful. I took a sip of black coffee. It was a $20 bag of beans from a small roaster in Seattle. My parents thought I drank instant coffee because it was cheaper. I set the mug down on my glass desk. Next to my laptop was a file. It was labeled Vance Residence Property Management. I picked up my phone and dialed a number. It rang once. "Good morning, Dr. Vance." The voice belonged to Marcus, my property manager. He was the face my parents knew. The mean landlord who let them live in the house out of the goodness of his heart, provided they paid the nominal $300 maintenance fee. They had never met the owner. They didn't know the owner was the daughter they had just kicked out into the snow. "Good morning, Marcus," I said. My voice was raspy from lack of sleep, but my mind was sharp. "Did you deliver the package? I just taped it to the front door myself," Marcus said. "I used the bright red urgent envelope like you asked. They cannot miss it." "Excellent," I said. "And the terms?" "Effective immediately," Marcus confirmed. "The lease violation is clear. Unauthorized long-term guests, excessive noise, failure to maintain the property standards. The grace period is over. The rent is adjusting to market value. $4,500 a month due on the 1st. "Perfect," I said. "Be ready for the call. They are going to scream at you." "Let them scream," Marcus said. "I work for Phoenix Rising LLC. I work for you. Merry Christmas, Doctor. Merry Christmas, Marcus." I hung up. I leaned back in my chair. I could picture it perfectly. My father, Robert, walking out in his robe to get the paper, seeing the red envelope, opening it, the confusion turning to shock, the shock turning to terror. They had lived in a 4-bedroom colonial in Oak Park for 5 years for $300 a month. They had forgotten what the real world cost. They had forgotten that their comfort was a gift, not a right. I didn't have to wait long. At 9:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was my father. I watched it ring. I let it go to voicemail. He called again immediately. I let it go again. They needed to stew. They needed to feel the walls closing in. I checked my banking app. I navigated to the sub-account labeled Mom Allowance. It was a discretionary fund I had set up years ago. A credit card in my name that I had given to my mother Linda for emergencies. Over the years, emergencies had turned into groceries, then hair appointments, then designer purses. I had never said a word. I paid the bill every month like a good daughter. Yesterday before the dinner, the balance was $0. I looked at the pending charges from the last 24 hours. $500 at a liquor store, $300 at a gourmet butcher, $200 at a bakery. They had used my card to buy the food and drink for the party I was kicked out of. I felt a flash of heat in my chest, but I pushed it down. Anger is a waste of energy. Action is better. I tapped the card icon. I selected Manage Card. I tapped Lock Card. The little green toggle turned gray. Transaction denied for all future purchases. I put the phone down. The trap was armed. Now I just had to wait for the snap. It happened at 11:30 a.m. My phone didn't just buzz this time. It practically vibrated off the table. It was my mother. She called 3 times in a row. Then a text. "Pick up the phone, Aaliyah. It is an emergency." I waited 5 more minutes. Then I answered. "Hello," I said, keeping my voice groggy, like I had just woken up from a long, hard shift. "Aaliyah." My mother's voice shrieked through the speaker. It was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. She was hysterical. "Mom, what's wrong? Is Dad okay?" "No, Dad is not okay. Nothing is okay. Where are you? Why aren't you answering your phone?" "I was sleeping, Mom," I said. "I worked a double yesterday. Remember? I don't care about your sleep," she screamed. "Do you know where I am? Do you have any idea what just happened to me?" I took a sip of my coffee. "No, Mom. Tell me." "I'm at the Serenity Spa," she yelled. "The expensive one downtown. I brought Mrs. Sterling here, Brad's mother. I wanted to treat her to a facial and a massage. A thank you for coming to dinner." Of course she did. She wanted to play the rich matriarch. She wanted to show Brad's wealthy white mother that the Vances had money too. That sounds nice, I said flatly. It was nice, until I went to pay, she screeched. We were at the front desk. There were people everywhere, Aaliyah, important people. I handed the girl the card, the platinum one you gave me. And do you know what she said? I think I do, but I let her say it. She said it was declined. Declined, Aaliyah. She ran it 3 times. She looked at me like I was a criminal, like I was trying to steal a massage. Mrs. Sterling had to pay. She had to take out her own card and pay for both of us. I have never been so humiliated in my entire life. I closed my eyes, savoring the image, the shame, the public embarrassment. It was a fraction of what Zoe had felt standing in the snow, but it was a start. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said. "That sounds awful." "Fix it," she demanded. "Call the bank right now. Tell them it's a mistake. I need to take Mrs. Sterling to lunch to make up for this disaster. Unlock the card, Aaliyah, right now." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my glass desk. "I can't. Mom." "What do you mean you can't?" I can't unlock it," I said. "I didn't lock it because of a fraud alert. I locked it because I canceled it." The silence on the other end was heavy. It lasted for a full 5 seconds. "You? What?" she whispered. "I canceled the card, Mom." "I'm broke." "Broke," she shouted. "You have a job. You work at the hospital. You always pay the bill." "I work in the ER. Mom," I said, letting my voice sound tired and defeated. "I'm just a medical worker. Do you know how much rent is in the city? Do you know how much student loans cost? I have been carrying that card balance for years, but I can't do it anymore." "You selfish little brat," she hissed. "You cut me off today, when I have guests. How could you be so spiteful? Is this about last night? Is this because you're mad about Zoe? It's about reality, Mom," I said. "You guys made it very clear last night. Brad is the future. Brad is the one building an empire. Brad is the one with the big investments. Don't you bring Brad into this," she snapped. "This is your responsibility. You told us we could use that card." "I did, I agreed, when I could afford it. But I can't afford to support you anymore. I have to prioritize my own household. Just like you prioritized yours last night. You are punishing us," she accused. "You are trying to ruin Brad's deal. If I look poor in front of the Sterlings, they won't invest. You are sabotaging this family." "I am not sabotaging anything," I said calmly. "I am just a night shift worker. Remember, I serve the food, I clean the wounds. I don't have investor money. If Brad is so successful, surely he can give you a credit card. Ask him." "How dare you," she sputtered. "Brad's money is tied up in assets. You have cash. You have a paycheck. Turn the card back on." "No," I said. "And that's not all, is it?" she said, her voice shaking with rage. "We got a letter this morning from that landlord, Marcus. He says the rent is going up to $4,500. "Wow," I said. "That's a big jump." "It's illegal," she shouted. "We pay $300. We have an agreement. You handle this, Aaliyah. You talk to him. You know him. You got us this house. Fix it." "I can't fix the housing market, Mom," I said. "Oak Park is expensive. Maybe the landlord realized he was practically giving the house away." "We can't pay $4,500, she screamed. "Your father is retired. We live on a fixed income. You have to pay it. You have to pay the difference." "Why would I do that?" I asked. "Because you are our daughter. Because you live alone in a cheap apartment and you have extra money. Because you owe us. I owe you." I asked, my voice dropping an octave. "I owe you for what? For kicking my child out into a blizzard, for telling her she wasn't good enough to sit at your table. She's a child. Aaliyah, get over it." My mother was hyperventilating now. "This is about survival. If we don't pay," he said, "we have 30 days to get out. 30 days, we will be homeless. Do you want your parents to be homeless?" I looked at the snow falling outside my window. It looked beautiful from up here. "Well, Mom," I said, "maybe you should ask the golden grandchild for help. Ask Brad. He's the genius. He's the future. I'm sure he can pay the rent." "Brad doesn't have liquid cash right now," she shrieked. "Then I guess you better start packing," I said. "Aaliyah, do not hang up on me. If you hang up on me, I swear to God I will come down to that hospital and cause a scene. I will tell everyone what kind of daughter you really are." "You do that, Mom," I said. "But you won't find me there. I'm taking some time off." "Time off for what?" To spend time with my daughter, I said, since she's the only family I have room for at my table. I hung up the phone. I didn't just hang up. I blocked the number. Then I blocked my father. Then I blocked the house landline. I sat in the silence of my office. My heart was beating fast, but my hands were steady. I had just cut off the financial lifeline that had supported them for a decade. I had humiliated my mother in front of the people she wanted to impress the most, and I had unleashed the landlord on them. But I wasn't done. This was just the jab. The knockout punch was still coming. My phone buzzed again. It wasn't my parents this time. It was an unknown number. I knew who it was. It was Brad. He wouldn't call from his own phone. He thought he was smart. I stared at the phone. I didn't answer. Let him panic. Let him realize that the bank of Aaliyah was closed forever. I stood up and walked to the window. Down below, the city was waking up. People were returning gifts, buying coffee, going on with their lives. But in a house in Oak Park, the walls were closing in. They thought I was weak. They thought I was just a nurse. They were about to find out that I was the surgeon, and I was cutting out the cancer. I was sitting on the lumpy beige sofa in my decoy apartment in downtown Chicago. It was a one-bedroom unit I had rented 5 years ago, specifically for days like this. The furniture was cheap laminate from IKEA. The carpet was a shade of brown that hid stains but looked perpetually dirty. The air smelled of my neighbor's boiled cabbage. There was not a single sign of wealth here. No art, no expensive electronics, just a stack of nursing journals I kept on the coffee table as props. To my family, this was where Aaliyah lived. This was the best Aaliyah could do. It was 12:30 p.m. when the pounding started. It wasn't a knock. It was a demand. Someone was hammering on the hollow wood door with the side of their fist. I didn't flinch. I knew who it was. I had been tracking my sister's location on Snapchat for the last hour. I walked to the door and opened it. Brad stood there. He was wearing a camel hair coat that I knew cost $3,000 a coat he had bought using the credit card I had just canceled. Behind him, my sister Jasmine was shivering in a cropped fur jacket, looking around the hallway with open disgust, as if the air itself might infect her. Beyond them, through the hallway window, I could see it parked in the fire lane, a gleaming silver Porsche 911. It had dealer plates. It was a loaner, a prop, just like him. "Well," Brad said, pushing past me without waiting for an invitation, "are you going to let us in, or do we have to stand out here with the drug dealers?" He strode into the small living room, his heavy designer boots thudding against the thin floorboards. Jasmine followed, wrinkling her nose. "It smells like old soup in here, Aaliyah," she said. "I don't know how you live like this. It's depressing." I closed the door. I leaned against it, crossing my arms over my chest. I was wearing my scrubs. Another prop. "What do you want, Brad?" I asked. Brad didn't answer immediately. He was busy inspecting my apartment with the air of a king visiting a peasant's hovel. He looked at the small TV. He sneered at the kitchenette. Then he walked over to the sofa and sat down, spreading his legs wide, claiming the space. He lifted his feet heavy with winter slush and road salt and slammed them onto my coffee table. The cheap legs of the table wobbled. He looked at me, a smirk playing on his lips. "We need to talk about your little tantrum this morning," he said. "My tantrum?" I asked. Cutting off Linda's card, he said, picking at a piece of lint on his coat. "Embarrassing her in front of my mother. That was low, Aaliyah, even for you. Do you have any idea how much damage control I had to do? My mother thinks Linda is insolvent." "She is insolvent, Brad," I said. "That's why she was using my card. She is family," Jasmine snapped, refusing to sit on the furniture. She was standing by the window looking out at the brick wall of the next building. "And you humiliated her. She called me crying. She couldn't even buy lunch." "That sounds hard," I said flatly. "It is hard," Brad said, "but I'm a problem solver. That's what I do. I manage wealth. I fix situations. And right now we have a liquidity situation." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He tossed it onto the table right next to his muddy boots. "I need $50,000, he said. I stared at him. The audacity was so pure it was almost impressive. "Excuse me." "50,000, he repeated slower this time, as if I were slow. "Working capital. I have a bridge loan closing next week for the new firm, but I need to show liquid assets on the balance sheet today to satisfy the underwriters. It's just a paper transfer. You want me to give you $50,000, I asked. Brad, I work at the hospital. I live here. Look around. Do you think I have $50,000 lying around? Don't lie to me, Aaliyah, Brad said, his voice dropping to a condescending drawl. Linda told me, you have a 401k. You've been working double shifts for 10 years. You have savings, probably sitting in some low-yield savings account, earning 0.01% interest because you are too scared to invest it. He leaned forward, his boots grinding deeper into the table. Here's the plan. You are going to liquidate that account. You are going to write me a cashier's check today. I will inject it into my fund. It's a loan, obviously. I'll pay you back with 10% interest in 6 months. That is a better return than you will ever see in your lifetime. I looked at Jasmine. She was nodding, checking her reflection in her phone screen. It's a good deal, Aaliyah, she said. Brad is doing you a favor. He usually doesn't take investments this small. I looked back at Brad. He was watching me with a look of utter contempt. He didn't see a human being. He saw a piggy bank he could smash open. And why would I do that? I asked. Why would I give you my retirement money? Because you owe us, he said. I owe you. Yes, you owe us. He gestured around the room. Look at you. You're 35 single. No prospects. No legacy. You hoard your little paycheck while real people are out there trying to build something. He laughed a cold, ugly sound. It's a tragedy, really. You're the classic stereotype, aren't you? The angry, bitter, single black woman. Working yourself to death, saving pennies, going home to an empty apartment. What are you saving for Aaliyah? A husband who isn't coming, a life you're never going to have. He pointed a finger at me. You are a genetic dead end. Jasmine and I, we are creating the future. We gave your parents a grandson. We are building generational wealth. Your money is useless sitting here. It's stagnant, just like you. I felt a flash of heat in my chest. It wasn't anger, it was the urge to laugh. He was sitting in a room I rented as a joke, lecturing me about wealth, while I had $45 million sitting in an account he couldn't even dream of accessing. He was calling me stagnant while I owned the hospital he thought I cleaned. But I couldn't laugh. Not yet. Take your feet off my table, I said. Brad blinked. He looked down at his boots, then back at me. He didn't move them. He smiled. Or what he asked. What are you going to do, Aaliyah? Are you going to call the police? Are you going to hit me? He dug his heels in, scratching the cheap laminate. This is what I'm talking about. Petty. You care more about a $20 table than you do about your family's future. This is why you're alone. This is why nobody wants you. You're small. You have a small mind. I stepped closer to him. I looked him dead in the eye. I said, take your feet off my table. Brad sighed a long, exaggerated sound of boredom. He swung his legs down, kicking the table hard enough to knock over a stack of magazines. Fine, he said. Are we done with the drama? I need that check by 2 p.m. The banks close early. I don't have it, I said. What, I don't have $50,000, Brad. And even if I did, I wouldn't give it to you. Not for your fund. Not for your house. Not if you were on fire. Brad stood up. He was tall, over 6 feet, and he used his height like a weapon. He loomed over me, invading my personal space. The smell of his expensive cologne was suffocating. You are lying, he hissed. Linda said you have it. Linda is wrong, I said. I spent it. Spent it on what? Look at this place. You possess nothing. I spent it on my daughter, I said. I put it in a trust for Zoe. It's gone. You can't touch it. Brad's face turned a violent shade of red. The veins in his neck bulged. You stupid, selfish bitch, he spat. You locked the money away. For her? She doesn't need a trust fund. She needs a father. She needs a family structure. You are wasting resources on a lost cause. He took a step toward me, his hand twitching at his side. You are going to fix this, he growled. I don't care how you do it. Go to the bank, take out a loan, sell your car. I need that $50,000. If I don't show liquidity, the deal falls through. If the deal falls through, I lose my investors. And if I lose my investors, he leaned down his face inches from mine, spitting the words, I am going to make sure your parents know exactly whose fault it is. I will make sure they know that their daughter chose to ruin them. You think you're the favorite because you pay the bills? You're nothing. You're the help, and the help does what they are told. I looked at him. I looked at the fear behind his eyes. He wasn't just greedy, he was desperate. The $50,000 wasn't for an investment. It was to cover a hole. He was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I was Peter. Get out, I said. Brad laughed. You're kicking me out of this dump. Get out, he sneered. Come on, Jasmine, let's go. It smells like failure in here anyway. He turned and walked to the door. Jasmine followed him, pausing only to look at me with wide, fake, sad eyes. You really are selfish, Aaliyah, she said. Mom was right. You just want to see us fail because you're miserable. I hope your money keeps you warm at night. She slammed the door behind her. I walked to the window. I watched them walk out to the silver Porsche. Brad kicked the tire of my SUV as he passed it. He got into the driver's seat, revving the engine, aggressively peeling out of the parking lot with a screech of tires that surely violated the lease terms of the car. I watched them go. He needed $50,000 today, or the deal falls through. I walked back to the table. I looked at the scratches his boots had left. He was desperate. He was exposed. I picked up my phone. I dialed a number. Mr. Sterling, I said when my lawyer answered. Dr. Vance Sterling said, How can I help you? I need you to run a full financial background check on a Bradley Peterson, I said. Specifically, I want to know about any outstanding bridge loans or pending investor contracts, and I want to know who holds his debt. I can do that, Sterling said. What are we looking for, leverage, I said. He just told me he needs $50,000 to show liquidity. That means he's broke. Find out who he owes. Consider it done. I hung up. I looked around the cheap apartment. He called me a genetic dead end. He called me stagnant. I grabbed my purse. I was done with this apartment. I was done with the disguise. It was time to go to work. The PDF file on my iPad was 300 pages long. It was a digital autopsy of a lie. I sat in my car, parked outside a trendy juice bar in the West Loop, reading the report Mr. Sterling had sent over just 20 minutes ago. It was worse than I thought. It was so much worse. Brad Peterson was not a wealth manager. He was not a consultant. He was not an entrepreneur. According to the IRS records and employment history Sterling had pulled, Brad had not held a W-2 job in 4 years. His last employment was as a junior associate at a car rental agency, and he had been fired for theft. I swiped to the next page, the Peterson Capital Fund. It was the entity Brad bragged about at every family dinner. It was the reason my parents treated him like a king. It was a shell, a literal empty shell registered to a P.O. box in a strip mall in Indiana. There were no assets. There were no trades. There was only a bank account that showed a sickening pattern. Money came in from individual depositors, $5,000 from a retired teacher, $10,000 from a deacon at my parents' church, $2,000 from my cousin. And the moment the money hit the account, it was transferred out. Not to stocks, not to bonds, but to Balenciaga, to Porsche Financial Services, to the Four Seasons, to five-star dining. He was running a Ponzi scheme. He was using new money to pay for his lifestyle, occasionally paying out a small dividend to an old investor to keep them quiet, claiming it was a return on investment. But the knife in my gut came on page 50. The primary funding source for the last 12 months was not investors. It was a series of transfers from a joint checking account held by Robert and Linda Vance, my parents. I looked at the numbers. $4,000, $3,000, $500. The dates matched perfectly. Every time I sent my parents money for a bill for a medical copay for groceries, they transferred it to Brad. I had been funding him. I had been buying his suits. I had been paying for the lease on that silver Porsche. I had been paying for the very boots he put on my table. I felt a wave of nausea. My parents were not just enabling him. They were laundering my money to prop up his delusion. They were stealing from me to make him look like a man. I looked up. Through the glass window of the juice bar, I saw my sister Jasmine. She was sitting at a high-top table, a ring light set up in front of her. She was holding a green smoothie, pouting her lips, taking a selfie. She looked perfect. Her hair was done. Her makeup was flawless. She was wearing the fur jacket she had worn to my apartment. She was living a lie funded by my sweat. I had to try. Just once. She was my sister. We shared blood. Maybe she didn't know. Maybe she was a victim too. I got out of the car. I walked into the juice bar. The smell of wheatgrass and ginger was sharp. Jasmine looked up as I approached. Her smile vanished. She put her phone down face up. "What are you doing here, Aaliyah?" she asked. "Are you following me?" I pulled out the chair opposite her and sat down. "I didn't order anything. We need to talk, Jasmine." "I am working," she said, gesturing to the smoothie. "I have a brand partnership deadline. I don't have time for your negativity. It is about Brad," I said. "Die." She rolled her eyes. "Oh my God. Are you still on that? He asked you for a loan. You said no. Move on. You don't have to stalk me to gloat." "It is not a loan, Jasmine," I said, keeping my voice low. "I hired a forensic accountant." She froze. "What?" "I investigated him," I said. I slid the iPad across the table. It was open to the page showing his employment history, or lack thereof. "He is not an investor, Jasmine. He is unemployed. He hasn't had a job in 4 years. The fund is fake. It is a Ponzi scheme. He is stealing money from old people at Mom and Dad's church, and he is stealing from Mom and Dad." Jasmine didn't look at the iPad. She looked at me. Her eyes were full of hate. "You investigated my husband. I am trying to protect you," I hissed. "He is going to prison, Jasmine. It is a matter of time. He owes people money, dangerous people. That is why he needed the $50,000 today. He is drowning." "You are crazy," she said. Her voice was getting louder. People were starting to look. "Look at the bank statements, Jasmine," I pleaded. "Look at the transfers. Mom and Dad have been sending him every dime I give them. He is spending it on clothes, on cars. That Porsche is leased in Dad's name. Did you know that?" She stood up. She grabbed the smoothie and threw it into the trash can next to the table. It made a loud, heavy sound. "You are a liar," she screamed. I sat there stunned. "You are a jealous, bitter liar," she shouted. "You can't stand it. You can't stand that I won. You can't stand that I married a white man who comes from a good family. You can't stand that I have a beautiful son and a husband who loves me while you are alone. He is using you," I said, standing up too. "He is using you to get to Mom and Dad's credit. He is a parasite. He is a king," she yelled. "He is building an empire. You are just trying to tear him down because you are miserable. You are the classic angry black woman, Aaliyah. You are mad because nobody wants you. You are mad because Brad chose me." "He chose a mark," I said, my voice cold. "He chose a victim." And then it happened. Jasmine stepped forward. She swung her hand. It wasn't a slap. It was a punch, an open-handed strike that connected hard with the side of my face. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet juice bar. My head snapped to the side. My cheek stung. I tasted blood in my mouth. The entire shop went silent. The barista stopped the blender. I slowly turned my head back to look at her. Jasmine was breathing hard. Her hand was still raised. She didn't look sorry. She looked righteous. "Don't you ever speak about my husband again," she hissed. "You are dead to me. You are jealous trash. Stay away from my family." She grabbed her ring light. She grabbed her purse. She stormed out of the juice bar, her heels clicking on the pavement. I stood there. I touched my cheek. It was hot. I looked at the people staring at me. Pity. Shock. I didn't feel embarrassed. I didn't feel sad. I felt clarity. The last thread was cut. The last bit of guilt I had about what I was going to do just evaporated. She knew. That was the realization that hit me. She didn't look at the iPad because she didn't need to. She knew he was a fraud. She knew the car was in Dad's name. She knew they were taking my money. She didn't care, as long as she got to wear the fur coat, as long as she got to drive the Porsche, as long as she got to post the photos and pretend she was better than me. She was willing to let her husband rob our parents blind. She was willing to let him steal from the church. She was not a victim. She was an accomplice. I picked up my iPad. I walked out of the juice bar. I got into my car. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. My cheek was red. There would be a bruise. Good. I picked up my phone. I dialed Sterling. "Mr. Sterling," I said. "Dr. Vance. Did you warn her?" "I tried," I said. She declined the warning. "I am sorry to hear that." "Don't be," I said. "It simplifies things. Proceed with Phase 2. "Phase 2? Sterling asked. "You want to file the fraud report." No, I said. Not yet. That is for later. Right now, I want to trigger the avalanche. I watched Jasmine's car turn the corner down the street. She was driving reckless, angry. You found the debt holders on Brad, I asked. Yes, Sterling said. He has 3 outstanding hard money loans, high interest, very aggressive lenders. He owes about $200,000. He is 3 months behind. Who holds the paper, I asked. A private equity group called Ironclad Capital. Buy it, I said. Excuse me, buy the debt, I said. Buy all of it. Offer them 100 cents on the dollar. I want to own every single penny Bradley Peterson owes. Dr. Vance. That is a significant outlay of cash for a bad debt. You will never recover it. I am not looking for a return on investment, Mr. Sterling. I am looking for a gavel. Buy the debt, and once we own it, I want you to call the note due, immediately. I understand, Sterling said. His voice was professional, but I could hear the smile. We will own him by end of business day. And Sterling, I added, yes, draft the custody petition. For the niece, for my daughter, I said. But yes, draft a petition for emergency custody of Braden as well. If both his parents are going to prison, someone needs to make sure the state doesn't take him. You are playing hardball, doctor. They slapped me. Mr. Sterling, I said, touching my face, I am done playing. I hung up the phone. I started the car. Brad wanted to build a legacy. I was about to give him one. I thought I had reached the bottom of the barrel with my family. I thought being slapped by my sister in a juice bar and having my parents steal my money was the worst it could get. I was wrong. There is no bottom. There is only a black hole of greed that consumes everything in its path, including children. It was 2 days after I bought Brad's debt. I was at Mercy General Hospital, standing at the nurses' station in the trauma unit. I was reviewing a chart for a patient who had just come out of surgery. It was a quiet moment, a rare moment of peace. Excuse me, are you Aaliyah Vance? I turned around. A man was standing there. He was wearing a cheap windbreaker and holding a manila envelope. He looked out of place in the sterile hallway. I am Dr. Vance, I said, correcting him automatically. Can I help you? He didn't smile. He just thrust the envelope at my chest. You have been served, he said. He turned and walked away before I could even touch the paper. The nurses stopped talking. The residents looked up from their tablets. Being served with legal papers in the middle of a hospital shift is not something that happens to the chief of trauma surgery. It is something that happens to people whose lives are falling apart. I took the envelope. My hands were steady, but my stomach turned over. I walked into my office and closed the door. I sat down at my desk and tore open the seal. I expected a lawsuit from Brad. Maybe he was suing me for harassment because I investigated him. Maybe my parents were suing me for support. I pulled out the document. The title at the top of the page made the room spin. Emergency Petition for Change of Custody. In the interest of Zoe Vance, a minor child. I stopped breathing. I read it again. Petitioners, Bradley Peterson and Jasmine Peterson. They were suing me for custody of my daughter. I forced myself to read the allegations. They were sickening. Paragraph 1 alleged that I was an absentee mother who worked irregular night shifts, leaving a minor child unsupervised for extended periods. Paragraph 2 claimed that I resided in substandard housing, citing the address of my decoy apartment and alleging that the environment was unsafe and unsanitary. Paragraph 3 claimed that I displayed signs of financial instability and emotional volatility. They were using my disguise against me. They were using the poverty I feigned to protect myself as a weapon to take my child. But why? Brad didn't like Zoe. He called her clutter. He kicked her out into the snow. Why would he want custody of a child he despised? I flipped to page 4, and there it was, the motive. The petitioner's request to be named the legal guardians of the minor child, and thereby the trustees of the Paternal Inheritance Fund, currently held in the minor's name until the age of 18. The trust fund. Zoe's father died before she was born. He wasn't rich, but his parents were. They had set up a trust for Zoe. It wasn't millions, but it was substantial, about $200,000. It was meant for her college. It was meant for her future. Brad had found out about it. He had done his own digging. He needed money. He needed liquidity. And since I wouldn't give him mine, he was going to steal my daughter's. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to put my head between my knees. He was trying to traffic my child for her bank account. But a judge would never grant this, not based on the word of an unemployed man and an influencer. They needed proof. They needed witnesses. I turned the page to the exhibits. Exhibit A, affidavit in support of petitioners. I looked at the signature at the bottom of the page. Aaliyah Vance, my mother. I read the words my mother had signed, sworn under penalty of perjury. My daughter Aaliyah has always struggled with stability. She works long hours at low-paying jobs and often neglects her daughter Zoe. Zoe frequently comes to our house hungry and cold. We believe it is in the best interest of the child to be placed in the loving, stable home of her Aunt Jasmine and Uncle Brad, where she can have a traditional family structure and proper care. I read the next one. Exhibit B. Robert Vance, my father. Aaliyah is resentful and jealous of her sister's success. She uses the child as a pawn. We fear for our granddaughter's safety in her mother's care. We fully support the petition for Jasmine and Brad to take custody. I dropped the papers on the floor. They signed it. My parents signed a legal document stating I was an unfit mother. They lied to a court. They perjured themselves. They were willing to rip my daughter away from me. They were willing to place her in the hands of a man who called her clutter, a man who kicked her out into a blizzard. Why? Because they were desperate, because I had cut them off, because the rent was due and the credit cards were locked. They needed Brad to save them, and Brad needed Zoe's money to save himself. So they traded her. They traded their granddaughter for a chance to keep living in a house they didn't own. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. The part of me that was a daughter died right then and there in that office. It withered up and turned to ash. There was no coming back from this. There was no forgiveness. There was no misunderstanding. This was war, and they had just targeted a nuclear bomb. I picked up my phone. I dialed Sterling. "I need you at the hospital," I said. "Now." "Is everything all right, Dr. Vance?" "No," I said. They filed for custody of Zoe. Sterling was silent for a moment. "On what grounds?" "Neglect," I said. "Poverty, instability." "That is absurd. We can prove your net worth in 5 seconds. We can show the deed to your penthouse. We can show your employment contract as chief of surgery. This will be thrown out in 10 minutes. "I know," I said, "but that is not the point. The point is who helped them." I told him about the affidavits. I told him about my parents. Sterling let out a low breath. "That is malicious. It is criminal," I said. Dr. Vance Sterling said, his voice serious. "If we reveal your true status now, we win the case. We crush the petition. But we also reveal your hand. They will know you are wealthy. They will know you own the house. They will switch tactics. They will sue you for support. They will claim they are destitute, and you abandoned them." "I know," I said. "So what do you want to do?" "I want to let them think they are winning," I said. I looked down at the papers on the floor. I looked at my mother's signature. "They want a hearing. Let's give them a hearing." "But not yet. Delay it. File for a continuance. Make them think I am scrambling. Make them think I am terrified." "Why?" Sterling asked. "Because Brad is desperate," I said. "He needs money now. If he thinks he has to wait for custody, he will try something else. He is a rat in a maze, Sterling. If we block one exit, he will try to chew through the wall. I want to see what wall he chews through. You think he will try to commit fraud again?" "I know he will," I said. "He owes $200,000 to the debt collectors I just bought. He thinks he has time, but he doesn't. And my parents," I added, my voice turning to ice, "they signed their names to a lie. They put their betrayal on public record. I want that record to stand. I want them to stand in front of a judge and say those words out loud, and then I want to destroy them with the truth." "Understood," Sterling said. "I will file a response denying the allegations, but asking for time to secure counsel. I will make you look weak. Make me look destitute," I said. "Make me look like I am begging." I hung up. I walked out of my office. I walked down the hall to the locker room. I took off my white coat, the coat that said Chief of Trauma Surgery. I folded it neatly and put it in my locker. I put on my old winter coat. I left the hospital. I got into my car and drove to Zoe's school. I picked her up early. She looked at me surprised. "Mom, is everything okay?" "Everything is fine, baby," I said. "We are going on a little trip." "Where?" "To the penthouse," I said. "We are going to stay there for a while. It is safer." I didn't tell her why. I didn't tell her that her grandparents wanted to sell her. I would never tell her that. I would protect her from their evil until the day I died. But I would not protect them. I drove us to the secure underground garage of my building. We took the private elevator up. We locked the heavy steel doors. That night I sat in the dark watching the snow fall over the city. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. "Aaliyah, we need to talk. Brad says there is a way to fix this. If you just sign guardianship over to them voluntarily, we can drop the lawsuit. It is better for Zoe. Think about her for once." I stared at the screen. "Think about her," I replied. "I am thinking about her, and I will see you in court." I put the phone down. They had crossed the line. They had come for my child. And now I was going to take everything they had. Not just the house, not just the money. I was going to take their freedom, because Brad wasn't going to wait for the court date. I knew him. He was drowning. And drowning men climb on top of anyone to get a breath of air. He was going to try something stupid. He was going to try something illegal. And I would be there to catch him. I was sitting at the head of the massive oak conference table in the Mercy General Boardroom. It was Wednesday morning, 3 days after my family had filed to take my daughter away from me. The room was filled with the hospital board of directors, 12 men and women who controlled the budget for the entire medical system. I was presenting my proposal for the new trauma wing expansion, a $40 million project that I had been spearheading for 6 months. The air was serious. The stakes were high. I was pointing to a schematic on the projection screen, explaining the need for 3 new surgical suites when my phone buzzed against the table. It wasn't my personal phone. It wasn't my hospital pager. It was a sleek, black phone I kept in my briefcase. The phone that only rang for one reason. It was the direct line for Phoenix Rising LLC, the holding company that owned my assets, including the house my parents lived in. I paused mid-sentence. I apologized to the board. I told them I had to take this. I picked up the phone and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city skyline. "This is Aaliyah Vance," I said, keeping my voice low. "Dr. Vance, this is Gregory Miles from the Risk Management Department at Sovereign Bank. I apologize for the interruption, but we have a red flag on a transaction involving one of your properties." I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. "Which property?" "The residence at 425 Maple Drive in Oak Park," he said. "My parents' house. The house they thought they were renting from a stranger." "Go on," I said. "We received an application this morning for an expedited hard money loan against the equity of the property," he said. "A second mortgage for $150,000. The applicant is pushing for a 48-hour close. He claims it is for emergency business capital." I stared at the gray winter sky. Brad. He was desperate. He owed $200,000 to the debt collectors I now owned, and they were squeezing him. He needed cash, and he needed it now. He was trying to drain the equity out of the house. "Who is the applicant?" I asked. "The primary applicant is a Bradley Peterson," he said, co-signed by Aaliyah Vance. "My mother. She was helping him. She was helping him sell the roof over her own head to save his fake empire." But Mr. Miles continued, his voice hesitant. "That is not why I called. We pulled the title work. The deed is held by Phoenix Rising LLC. That is you. But the application includes a notarized letter of consent and a guarantor signature from the property owner." I gripped the phone tighter. "A guarantor signature." "Yes, ma'am," he said. "It appears to be signed by you, Aaliyah Vance. It authorizes the loan and uses the property as collateral." The room behind me faded away. The board members, the $40 million proposal, the hospital politics, it all vanished. He forged my signature. He must have found the old paperwork in the basement, the original deed from 5 years ago, before I transferred it to the LLC. He saw my name. He realized I was the owner, or at least that I was on the title. And instead of asking me, instead of coming clean, he decided to become a felon. He forged my name. He notarized it probably with a fake stamp he bought online or a crooked friend. He was trying to steal $150,000 of equity from a house he didn't own using the identity of the woman he was trying to sue. It was breathtaking. It was the most reckless, stupid, arrogant move I had ever seen. And it was exactly what I had been waiting for, Dr. Vance, Mr. Miles said. I assume, based on your silence, that you did not sign this document. No, Gregory, I said, my voice ice cold. I certainly did not. I will flag it immediately, he said. We will deny the loan and alert the authorities for fraud. No, I said. There was a pause on the line. I beg your pardon. Do not deny it, I said. Not yet. Where is he right now? He is in our downtown branch, Mr. Miles said. He is sitting in the loan officer's office with Mrs. Vance. They are waiting for the final approval code to sign the closing documents. They think it is a done deal. They are there now. I asked, checking my watch. It was 10:15 a.m. Yes, ma'am. Tell the loan officer to stall, I said. Tell him the system is slow. Tell him the printer is jammed. Tell him whatever you have to tell him to keep them in that chair for another 30 minutes. Dr. Vance, what are you going to do? I am going to come down there, I said. I want to see his face when he signs my name. I want the ink to be wet when the handcuffs go on. I understand, Mr. Miles said. I will alert branch security and I will call the police. We will keep them there. Thank you, Gregory. I hung up the phone. I turned back to the boardroom. 12 pairs of eyes were staring at me. They saw the look on my face. It wasn't the look of a doctor. It was the look of an executioner. I am afraid we have to suspend this meeting, I said calmly, gathering my files. A family emergency has arisen, a very serious legal matter. The chairman of the board nodded. Go, Aaliyah. We can reschedule. I didn't run. I didn't rush. I walked out of the hospital with the steady, purposeful stride of a woman who has already won. I got into my car. I drove toward downtown. As I drove, I thought about my mother, Linda. She was sitting in that bank office right now, holding Brad's hand, probably telling him how proud she was. She was signing away her home. She was helping him commit a felony against her own daughter. She had looked at the forged signature. She had seen my name written by his hand, and she had said nothing. She was willing to let him steal from me. She was willing to let him destroy my credit, my assets, my life, just to keep his lie alive. The betrayal was so complete, it wasn't even painful anymore. It was just fuel. I pulled up to the bank. It was a large glass building on Michigan Avenue. I parked in the fire lane. I put my placard on the dash. Trauma surgeon on call. It usually worked. Today I didn't care if they towed it. I walked into the lobby. It was quiet. The air conditioning was cold. I saw Mr. Miles waiting for me by the security desk. He nodded. They are in office 3, he whispered. The police are outside the back entrance waiting for your signal. The loan officer is printing the final papers now. Let's go, I said. I followed him down the hallway. The glass walls of the offices were frosted, but I could see the silhouettes. I saw the shape of my mother's hair. I saw Brad's animated gestures. He was probably bragging about the deal, probably telling the loan officer about his vision. We reached the door. Mr. Miles put his hand on the handle. Ready, he asked. Open it. He opened the door. The room was small and smelled of cheap coffee. Brad was sitting on the edge of his chair, leaning over the desk, pen in hand. My mother was next to him, clutching her purse, looking nervous but hopeful. The loan officer, a young woman who looked terrified, looked up at me with relief. Brad looked up. His smile died. It didn't fade. It was deleted. His face went gray. The pen slipped from his fingers and rolled across the desk. My mother gasped. Her hand flew to her throat. Aaliyah. Hello, Mother, I said, stepping into the room. Hello, Brad. Brad stood up, knocking his chair back. What are you doing here? Are you stalking me? I looked at the papers on the desk. I reached out and picked up the top sheet. It was the promissory note. $150,000, secured by the property at 425 Maple Drive. And there at the bottom was the signature, Aaliyah Vance. It was a good forgery. He had practiced. He had even tried to copy the little loop I did on the V. I looked at him. He was sweating. He was looking at the door, looking for an escape. I see you have been busy, I said, holding up the paper. Taking out a loan on my house. It is not your house." He snapped, his voice cracking. "It is Mom and Dad's house. You just co-signed years ago. I found the papers. We are just accessing the equity. We are going to pay it back." "You found the papers," I repeated. "You mean you found the deed that lists me as the owner." "You are just the name on the paper," he shouted, desperate to control the narrative. "It is their home. They have lived there for 30 years. They have the right to use the money." Mom signed. She agreed. I looked at my mother. Linda was shrinking in her chair, making herself small. "Mom," I said, "did you know he signed my name?" She looked at the floor. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Aaliyah, please. He needs it. It is just a signature. We were going to tell you after the deal closed. We were going to pay you a dividend. You were going to commit fraud," I said. "It is not fraud if we are family," Brad yelled. He moved toward me, aggressive, trying to intimidate me. "Give me the paper, Aaliyah. This deal is closing. You are not going to ruin this." He reached for the document in my hand. That was the mistake. I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. "Mr. Miles," I said, not taking my eyes off Brad, "you can send them in now." Mr. Miles opened the door wider. 2 uniformed officers stepped in. They filled the small room. "Bradley Peterson," one officer said, reaching for his belt. "Step away from the desk. Put your hands behind your back." Brad froze. The aggression drained out of him, leaving only a pathetic, trembling fear. "What is this?" he stammered. "Mom, do something." My mother stood up, wailing. "No, don't touch him. He didn't mean it. It was a mistake. Aaliyah, tell them. Tell them you gave him permission. Tell them you signed it." She looked at me, pleading, begging me to lie, begging me to save him. "Please, Aaliyah. He is your brother-in-law. He is family. Just say you signed it." I looked at the man who had called my daughter Clutter. I looked at the woman who had kicked her out into the snow. I looked at the forged signature that would have put me in debt for decades. I looked at the officer. "I have never signed that document," I said clearly. "That man is a stranger to me. He's trying to steal my property." Brad screamed as the handcuffs clicked. My mother fell back into her chair, sobbing hysterically. The trap had snapped shut, but I wasn't done. The house was just the bait. Now it was time for the eviction. They say cockroaches are the only things that can survive a nuclear blast. I learned that day that narcissists are exactly the same. Brad Peterson had been arrested in a bank office at 10 in the morning for forgery and attempted grand larceny. I watched the police drag him out in handcuffs. I watched my mother collapse in hysterics. I thought it was over. I thought reality had finally pierced their delusion. I was wrong. Money talks, and apparently Brad's parents spoke very loudly. The Sterlings must have posted his bail within the hour, and Brad, being the master manipulator he was, must have spun a story so fantastic, so convincing, that he turned his arrest into a victory lap. He probably told them I was the crazy one. He probably told them I framed him. He probably told them the bank made a clerical error and apologized profusely. Whatever he said, they believed him. Because at 4 in the afternoon, just 6 hours after I watched him being stuffed into a squad car, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jasmine. It was a digital invitation, a glossy, overproduced graphic with gold lettering, the Peterson Vance Family Gala, celebrating the launch of the Peterson Capital Fund and the expansion of our family. Tonight at 7 p.m., 425 Maple Drive. I stared at the screen. They were throwing a party. In my house. The house they were about to be evicted from. The house he had tried to steal. They were celebrating. Then the phone rang. It was Brad. I answered. I put it on speaker. I wanted to hear the desperation. "Aaliyah," he said. His voice was smooth, calm, almost cheerful. It was the voice of a man who had completely dissociated from reality. "I assume you got the invite." "I did," I said. "I am surprised you have your phone. I thought they took personal effects in booking." He laughed. A short, dismissive sound. "Oh, that was a misunderstanding, Aaliyah. A terrible mix-up. The bank manager called me personally to apologize. He fired that incompetent loan officer. The loan is approved. The money is in my account. We are back on track." He was lying. I knew the bank manager. I knew the loan was denied. I knew he was facing felonies. But he wasn't lying to me. He was practicing the lie he was telling everyone else. He was doubling down. "That is amazing, Brad," I said, playing along. "So why call me?" "Because we have unfinished business," he said, his voice hardening. "The custody petition." "I am not signing it," I said. "You are coming to this party, Aaliyah," he said, "and you are going to sign it in front of my parents and your parents. You are going to sign a voluntary guardianship agreement giving full custody of Zoe to Jasmine and me. And why would I do that? Because if you don't," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "I am going to ruin you." I waited. "I know people at the hospital, Aaliyah," he said. "I know the administrators. I know how easy it is for a nurse to lose her license. A missing pill here, a falsified chart there, an anonymous report about substance abuse. It sticks, Aaliyah. Even if it isn't true, the investigation alone will get you suspended. You will lose your job, you will lose your income, and then the court will definitely give Zoe to us because you will be destitute." I felt a cold rage settle in my gut. He was threatening my career, the career he thought was a low-level nursing job. He was threatening to frame me to steal my child. "You are a monster," I said. "I am a businessman," he corrected, "and I am closing this deal. You come to the house tonight. You wear something nice for once. You smile, you sign the papers, and maybe I let you see Zoe on weekends, if you behave." I looked at the snow falling outside my penthouse window. "What time?" I asked. 7 o'clock sharp," he said. "Don't be late." "And Aaliyah?" "Yes." "Park down the street. We don't want your beat-up car in the driveway. It ruins the aesthetic." He hung up. I sat there for a long time. The silence in my apartment was heavy. He thought he had won. He thought he had maneuvered me into a corner. He thought his threats held weight. He didn't know that I wasn't just a nurse. He didn't know that I was the chief of trauma surgery. He didn't know that the hospital administrators he claimed to know answered to a board of directors that I sat on. He didn't know that I owned the debt he was celebrating. He didn't know that I owned the house he was partying in. He was a man standing on a trapdoor daring me to pull the lever. I stood up. I walked to my closet. For years I had played the role they assigned me. The tired worker, the struggling single mom, the woman in the sensible shoes and the worn-out coat. I had dimmed my light so they wouldn't feel blinded. I had made myself small so they could feel big. Not tonight. I pushed aside the scrubs. I pushed aside the jeans. I walked to the back of the walk-in closet to the section I kept covered in garment bags. The section for Aaliyah Vance, the CEO of Phoenix Rising. Aaliyah Vance, the multimillionaire. I unzipped a bag. I pulled out a suit. It was not sensible. It was a custom-tailored Italian silk suit in a deep blood red. It was sharp. It was aggressive. It was the color of war. I pulled out a pair of Louboutin heels. The soles were red like fresh blood. I went to my safe. I opened it. I took out my jewelry. Not the small stud earrings I wore to work. I took out the diamond necklace I had bought myself after closing my first $10 million deal. I put on the Rolex I kept hidden in a sock drawer. I went to the bathroom. I pulled my hair back, not in a messy bun, but in a sleek, severe ponytail that pulled my features tight. I applied my makeup, sharp-winged eyeliner, dark red lipstick. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back at me was not a victim. She was not a scapegoat. She was a predator. She was the person who held the power of life and death in her hands every single night. She was the person who made split-second decisions that determined the fate of human beings. And tonight, she was going to perform a surgery. She was going to cut out the rot that had infected her life for 30 years. I walked back into the living room. I picked up my phone. I dialed Sterling. "Are you ready?" I asked. "I am parked outside the house," Dr. Vance, Sterling said. "The police are staging around the corner. The eviction notice is in my hand. The foreclosure documents are signed." "Good," I said. "And the other matter, the debt," Sterling said. "We called the note due an hour ago. He missed the deadline. He is officially in default. We have the right to seize all assets immediately." "Perfect." I picked up my keys. Not the keys to the SUV. The keys to the matte black Mercedes G-Wagon I kept in storage in the private garage. I walked to the elevator. Brad wanted me to come to his party. He wanted me to be a prop in his play. He wanted to humiliate me one last time before he took my daughter. I stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. He said he wanted to finish the deal. "Okay, Brad," I whispered to the empty car. "Let's finish it." The house was glowing. Every window was lit. It looked like a castle made of lies. I pulled the matte black Mercedes G-Wagon to the curb right behind the silver Porsche. I killed the engine. The rumble of the V8 died away, leaving only the silence of the winter night. Mr. Sterling sat in the passenger seat checking his watch. He looked like what he was, a shark in a $3,000 suit. "Ready, Dr. Vance?" he asked. I looked at the house, my house. I looked at the people inside, drinking my wine, laughing at my expense. "I am ready," I said. We got out. The air was biting cold, but I didn't feel it. My blood was running hot. My heels clicked on the paved driveway, a sharp military rhythm. I didn't walk like the tired daughter anymore. I walked like the owner. I didn't knock. I opened the front door and walked in. The noise of the party hit me first. Jazz music, laughter, the clink of crystal. There were about 30 people in the living room and foyer. Brad's parents, the Sterlings, were there holding court near the fireplace. My parents were circulating, playing the gracious hosts in a home they were about to lose. Jasmine was by the bar looking nervous. And Brad. Brad was in the center of the room holding a glass of champagne, looking like the king of the world. He was wearing a tuxedo he had probably rented. The conversation died. It didn't taper off. It stopped. Heads turned. Eyes widened. They were expecting Aaliyah, the nurse. They were expecting the woman in the oversized coat and the scuffed sneakers. They were expecting the victim. Instead, they saw a woman in a blood-red Italian silk suit that fit like a second skin. They saw the diamond necklace catching the light of the chandelier. They saw the Rolex. They saw the face of a woman who was done apologizing. Brad was the first to recover. He blinked his eyes, scanning me up and down. Confusion warred with arrogance on his face. He didn't understand what he was seeing, so he decided to attack it. He decided to do what he always did. Belittle me. Well, he boomed, his voice too loud in the silent room. "Look who finally decided to show up." And she dressed up. "Did you rent a costume, Aaliyah? It is a little flashy for a nurse, isn't it?" A few people chuckled nervously. My mother, Linda, rushed forward, her face a mask of panic. "Aaliyah," she hissed, "what are you wearing? You look ridiculous. And you are late. We told you 7 o'clock. I ignored her. I kept my eyes on Brad. I walked further into the room. Mr. Sterling followed a step behind me, a silent, dark shadow. Brad's eyes flicked to Sterling. He saw the gray hair. He saw the expensive suit. He saw the briefcase. "And who is this?" he sneered, gesturing with his champagne glass. "Did you bring a date, Aaliyah? Is this the boyfriend you have been hiding? A little old for you, isn't he? Or is he a sugar daddy? Is that how you afforded the dress?" He laughed, looking around the room for validation, looking for his parents to join in. "Did you find him at the hospital?" Brad continued. "A lonely patient. That is sweet, really. At least someone is willing to pay for your dinner since you are so broke." Jasmine giggled nervously. "Oh my God, Aaliyah, that is so embarrassing. You brought a stranger to a family event." I stopped in the middle of the room. I let him finish. I let every insult land. I let everyone in that room hear exactly who he was. Then I stepped aside. Mr. Sterling stepped forward. He didn't look at Brad with anger. He looked at him with the boredom of a man who crushed insects for a living. He set his briefcase down on the entry table, moving a vase of flowers aside without asking. The click of the latches opening echoed in the room. "I am not a date," Mr. Sterling said, his voice deep and resonating. "And I am certainly not a sugar daddy." He pulled out a single business card and held it up. "I am Arthur Sterling, senior partner at Sterling, Vance and Associates." Brad frowned. "Vance? What? I am legal counsel?" Mr. Sterling continued, his voice rising just enough to command the entire room. "I am here representing my client." He turned and gestured to me with a deferential nod. "I represent Dr. Aaliyah Vance." Brad snorted. "Dr. Vance. She is a nurse buddy. She changes bedpans. You got the wrong girl." Mr. Sterling didn't blink. "I represent Dr. Aaliyah Vance, the chief of trauma surgery at Mercy General Hospital." The room went dead silent. My mother's mouth dropped open. Brad's glass lowered an inch. "Chief of surgery," my father Robert whispered. That is not true." She works nights. She works nights because she runs the busiest Level 1 trauma center in the state, Mr. Sterling said, cutting him off. She manages a staff of 200. She oversees a budget of $40 million. He wasn't done. I also represent Dr. Vance in her capacity as the founder and majority shareholder of Phoenix Rising, LLC. Onyx Rising. Brad's father. Mr. Sterling Sr. spoke up for the first time. His voice was trembling. Phoenix Rising, the private equity firm, the one that just bought the downtown medical complex. That is the one, Mr. Sterling said. Brad looked like he had been slapped. Phoenix Rising, wait. No. Phoenix Rising, LLC. Mr. Sterling continued looking directly at Brad, the company that holds the title to this property. He pulled a document from his briefcase. The company that holds the deed to 425 Maple Drive. He pulled out another document. And as of yesterday afternoon, the company that acquired the entire debt portfolio of one Bradley Peterson from Ironclad Capital. Mr. Sterling closed the briefcase. I am not her boyfriend, Mr. Peterson. I am her lawyer, and I am here to inform you that you are trespassing on my client's property. The silence was absolute. It was heavy. It was suffocating. Brad's face had drained of all color. He looked at me. He looked at the red suit. He looked at the diamonds. He looked at the woman he had called a loser, a genetic dead end, a nurse. He realized in that split second that he hadn't been bullying a sheep. He had been poking a sleeping dragon. You own the house, he whispered. I took a step forward. My heels clicked on the hardwood. I own the house, Brad, I said, my voice calm and cold. I own the roof. I own the walls. I own the floor you are standing on. I looked at my parents. They were huddled together, looking at me with a mixture of terror and confusion. I bought it 5 years ago, I said. When you lost your pension, Dad, when you were going to be on the street, I bought it so you could keep your dignity. I let you pretend you were renting it so you wouldn't feel small. My mother started to cry. Aaliyah, we didn't know. You didn't ask, I said. You were too busy looking down on me, too busy worshiping him. I pointed at Brad. And because I own the house, I set the rules. And the first rule is that there is no room at my table for people who abuse my child. Brad dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the floor. Champagne soaked into the expensive rug. You can't do this, he stammered. My parents, the investors. I looked at the elder Sterlings. They were looking at their son with horror. They were looking at me with awe. Your investors, I said. You mean the people whose money you were about to steal? No, Brad screamed. No, do not listen to her. She is lying. She is crazy. She is just a jealous, bitter... Show them, Mr. Sterling, I said. Sterling pulled out the last document, the forensic accounting of the Peterson Capital Fund, the Ponzi scheme, the theft. He handed it to Brad's father. Read it, I said. Brad lunged. He tried to grab the paper. Security, I said. The front door opened again. 2 uniformed police officers stepped in. They had been waiting on the porch. They weren't here for the party. They were here for the cleanup, and the party was just getting started. The police officers stood at the door, their presence a silent, heavy weight in the festive room. But they didn't move to arrest anyone yet. They were waiting for my signal. I wasn't done. I had stripped Brad of his title. Now I was going to strip them of their shelter. I walked past Brad, who was shaking in the grip of his own terror, and moved toward the dining room archway. The same archway where I had stood 3 nights ago wearing my scrubs, watching my daughter be humiliated. The table was set again. The fine china, the crystal, the centerpiece of white roses that probably cost more than my first semester of medical school. It was perfect. It was a stage set for a play about a happy, successful family. I walked to the head of the table, my father's chair. I placed my hands on the back of it. The leather was cool under my fingers. You told my daughter there was no room for her at this table, I said. My voice was not loud, but in the terrified silence of the house it carried to every corner. You told a 14-year-old girl that she was clutter, that she didn't fit the aesthetic. You sent her out into a blizzard because you needed her chair for someone more important. I looked at my mother. She was clutching her pearls, her face gray. "Well, Mom," I continued, "I have good news. You don't have to worry about the seating arrangements anymore. Because as of this moment, this table, this chair, and this entire dining room are no longer at your disposal." I turned to Mr. Sterling. "The deed." He handed me the heavy cream-colored document. I held it up. It wasn't a copy. It was the original. 5 years ago, I said, walking slowly toward my father, "You called me in the middle of the night, Dad. You were crying. You told me you had gambled away the pension. You told me the bank was foreclosing in 30 days. You told me you were going to kill yourself because you couldn't bear the shame of the neighbors seeing the eviction notice." My father made a small, wounded sound. He looked at Brad's parents, the Sterlings, who were staring at him with open shock. His secret was out. "I didn't lecture you," I said. "I didn't tell you to be more responsible. I saved you. I emptied my savings. I took out a loan against my own future. I bought this house from the bank for cash so you wouldn't have to leave. I set up the LLC so you could pretend you were renting. I charged you $300 a month for a house that costs $4,000 to maintain. I did it to save your pride." I threw the deed onto the table. It slid across the polished wood and knocked over a wine glass. Red wine spilled across the white tablecloth like blood. "And how did you repay me?" I asked. "Did you say thank you? Did you treat me with respect?" "No. You treated me like a servant. You treated my daughter like a stray dog. You took the roof I put over your head and you used it to shelter him." I pointed a finger at Brad. "You let a stranger, a liar, a thief, come into the home I paid for and disrespect your own child. You sided with him. You signed affidavits saying I was unfit. You tried to help him steal the equity I built." My mother sobbed. "Aaliyah, please. We were scared. You thought I was weak. I cut her off. You thought I was just the nurse. You thought you could use me and discard me. You thought wrong." I looked at the guests, the investors, the friends. "Get out," I said. They didn't need to be told twice. They grabbed their coats. They grabbed their purses. They scrambled for the door, desperate to escape the blast radius of the Vance family implosion. Brad's parents, the Sterlings, stood up. Mr. Sterling Sr. looked at his son with a look of pure disgust. "You told us you bought this house, Brad," he said, his voice shaking. "You told us you paid it off." Brad couldn't speak. He was hyperventilating. "Get out, Mom and Dad," Brad's mother said. "We are leaving." They walked out. They didn't look back at their son. Now it was just us. My family, the police, and Mr. Sterling. I checked my Rolex. It was 7:35 p.m. "You have 60 minutes, I said. My father looked up. "What?" "You have 60 minutes to pack your personal effects and vacate the premises," I said. "Vacate," my mother shrieked. "Aaliyah, you can't be serious. This is our home. We have lived here for 30 years. Where will we go? It is snowing." "I don't care where you go," I said. "Go to a hotel. Go to a shelter. Go to hell for all I care. But you are not staying here." "Aaliyah, be reasonable," my father pleaded, coming toward me, hands out. "We are your parents. You can't just put us on the street. It is illegal. We have rights. Tenants' rights." Mr. Sterling stepped forward. "Actually, Mr. Vance, you do not. The lease you signed 5 years ago, the one you didn't bother to read, clearly states that any attempt to encumber the property, such as forging the owner's signature on a loan application, constitutes an immediate breach of contract and results in an automatic forfeiture of tenancy." He held up a copy of the loan application Brad and my mother had signed at the bank. "You committed a felony on the property," Mr. Sterling said. "The eviction is immediate. The police are here to enforce it." My father collapsed onto the sofa. The sofa I had paid for. 60 minutes, I repeated. "And I suggest you hurry, because at 8:35 p.m. the locks will be changed. Anything left inside will be considered abandoned property and will be donated to charity." My mother looked at the walls. She looked at her knickknacks, her photos, her life. "You are evil," she whispered. "You are a monster. How could you do this to your own mother?" I learned from the best, I said. "You taught me that family is conditional, Mom. You taught me that there is no room at the table for people who don't bring value. Well, guess what? You don't bring value anymore. You are a liability." Jasmine, who had been cowering in the corner, suddenly rushed forward. "What about me?" She cried. "What about Braden? He is a baby. You can't kick a baby out." I looked at my sister, the influencer, the one who slapped me. "You have a husband, Jasmine," I said, "a rich, successful husband who is building an empire. I am sure he can put you up in the Four Seasons." "Oh, wait." I looked at Brad. He was leaning against the wall looking like he was going to vomit. "He can't, can he? Because he is broke. And in about 5 minutes he is going to be in handcuffs. So I suggest you pack a bag for the baby Jasmine. You are going to need it." I turned my back on them. "Start packing," I said. The sound that followed was the sound of total chaos. My mother started screaming, running up the stairs. My father was yelling at Brad. Jasmine was crying. I walked over to the fireplace. I looked at the stockings hung there. One for Brad, one for Jasmine, one for Braden, none for Zoe. I reached up and pulled them down one by one. I threw them into the fire. I watched the synthetic velvet curl and blacken. I watched the names burn. The police officers stood by the door, arms crossed, watching the clock. This wasn't petty. This was hygiene. I was cleaning the wound. I was burning out the infection so that I could finally heal. I walked to the window and looked out at the snow. I thought of Zoe sitting in the warm penthouse eating pizza, watching a movie safe. She would never be cold again. She would never be hungry. And she would never ever have to beg for a seat at a table that wasn't worthy of her. I heard the sound of suitcases bumping down the stairs. I heard the frantic voices. 40 minutes left, I called out without turning around. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I opened the camera app. I switched it to video. I wanted to remember this. I wanted to remember the moment they realized that Aaliyah the nurse was dead and Dr. Vance the owner had finally come home. "You are lying," Brad screamed. The sound tore through the chaotic living room, silencing the packing and the crying. He was standing by the television, his face a mask of sweaty, desperate rage. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You are lying. You forged that signature. You are trying to frame me because you are jealous. Officer, arrest her. She is the criminal. She is trying to steal my company." I didn't shout back. I didn't argue. I simply walked over to the large flat-screen television mounted above the fireplace, the television I had paid for. I pulled an HDMI cable from the side and plugged it into my phone. "You want the truth, Brad," I said calmly. "Let us put it on the big screen." The screen flickered to life. It wasn't a movie. It was a security video. It was grainy but clear enough. It showed a small office. A bank office. It showed Brad sitting at a desk. It showed him picking up a pen. It showed him signing a document. And then I swiped the screen. The next image was a high-resolution scan of the document itself, the loan application, the signature line, Aaliyah Vance. I zoomed in. "That is not my handwriting," I said, my voice echoing in the silent room. "And that is not my hand on the video." Brad made a choking sound. He looked at the police officers. He looked at his parents. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling were standing by the door, frozen. They were looking at the screen, and then they were looking at their son. The realization was washing over them. They saw the fraud. They saw the desperation. And then I swiped one more time. "This," I said, "is the balance sheet for the Peterson Capital Fund, the fund you invested in Mr. Sterling." The screen filled with red numbers, negative balances, wire transfers to Gucci, wire transfers to Porsche Financial, wire transfers to DraftKings. "There is no fund," I said, looking at Brad's father. "He spent your money. He spent my parents' money. He spent it on clothes and gambling and trying to look rich. He is not an investor. He is a thief." "No," Brad wailed. "No, Dad, it is a lie." "I can explain. It is just accounting." Mr. Sterling Sr. walked up to his son. His face was gray. He looked at the boy he had raised, the boy he had bailed out 1,000 times. "You stole from us," he whispered. "You stole from your mother." "Dad, please," Brad begged, reaching out. "Don't touch me," his father said, recoiling. "You are rot. You are absolute rot." He turned to the police officers. "Officer, take him." The officers moved. They didn't hesitate this time. They spun Brad around. He didn't fight. He just collapsed, weeping. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was final. It was the sound of a legacy ending. Brad looked at me as they dragged him toward the door. His eyes were wide, terrified. "Aaliyah," he pleaded. "Aaliyah, help me. I am family. Please. I looked at him. You are clutter, I said. The officers hauled him out into the snow. The flashing blue lights of the squad car illuminated the room through the front window. Mr. Sterling Sr. looked at me. He looked at the red suit. He looked at the evidence on the screen. There was fear in his eyes. He realized that the woman he had dismissed as a nurse had just dismantled his son with surgical precision. I didn't know, Dr. Vance, he said, his voice shaking. We didn't know. Now you do, I said. Please leave my house. He took his wife's arm and they hurried out the door, stepping over the piles of luggage my parents were dragging toward the entrance. They didn't look back. They got into their expensive car and drove away, leaving their son in the back of a police cruiser. I turned to my family, my mother, my father, my sister. They were standing there holding trash bags filled with their clothes. Their eyes were red. They were shaking. The clock on the mantel chimed. 8:35 p.m. Time is up, I said. The police officer stepped forward. Folks, you have to go, now. They shuffled out into the cold. I followed them. I stood on the porch under the warm light and watched them drag their belongings through the snow to the curb. They stood there on the sidewalk. The snow was falling harder now. They looked like refugees. They looked small. My mother looked up at me. The snow was wetting her hair. She was shivering. Aaliyah, she cried, her voice thin in the wind. Please, where are we supposed to go? It is Christmas. Have mercy. I walked down the steps. I stopped at the gate. I looked at them over the iron bars. You told my daughter to go home, I said. You told her there was no room. I am sorry, my father wept. We are sorry. We will make it up to you. Just let us back in. I shook my head. No, Dad, I said. You made your choice. You bet on the golden child. You bet on the white savior. I pointed to the police car where Brad was banging his head against the window screaming. He is all yours, I said. You wanted him. You defended him. You lied for him. I looked at Jasmine, who was clutching her baby and sobbing. He is your future, I said. Stick with him. Maybe he can manage your wealth from his cell. I turned around. I walked back up the driveway. Aaliyah, my mother, screamed a desperate, broken sound. Aaliyah, don't leave us. We are your family. I opened the door to my car, the matte black G-Wagon. I got in. I started the engine. The heated seats were warm. The leather smelled rich. I rolled down the window one last time. You are not my family, I said. You are just people I used to know. I rolled the window up. I put the car in drive. I drove past them. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I left them standing on the curb in the snow with their trash bags and their regrets. 30 minutes later, I walked into my penthouse. It was warm. It smelled of vanilla and peace. Zoe was sitting on the big white sofa wrapped in a fluffy blanket. She was watching a movie. A pizza box was open on the coffee table. She looked up when I walked in. Her eyes were bright. She was safe. Did you do it? She asked. I did it, baby, I said. I took off my coat. I kicked off my red heels. I walked over and sat down next to her. Are they mad? She asked. They are gone, I said. They can never hurt you again. I picked up a slice of pizza. It was pepperoni. It was greasy and cheap, and it was the best thing I had ever tasted. I looked out the window at the city lights. I thought about my parents shivering in the cold. I thought about Brad in a cage. I took a bite of pizza. I felt light. I felt clean. Merry Christmas, Zoe, I said, pulling her close. Merry Christmas, Mom, she said, resting her head on my shoulder. We ate our pizza in silence, the silence of a home that belonged only to us, the silence of a war that was finally over. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly where my seat was at the table. It was right here, at the head of it. This story serves as a searing reminder that your value is not a negotiation, and family is not a free pass for abuse. Aaliyah spent years diminishing her own light to make her family feel comfortable in their mediocrity. She played the role of the humble nurse and the dutiful daughter, hoping that her silent sacrifices would eventually be recognized. But users do not recognize sacrifice. They only recognize supply. As long as she provided the supply, the house, the money, the silence, they felt entitled to disrespect her. The pivotal moment wasn't when she became rich. It was when she decided her daughter's dignity was worth more than her parents' approval. By kicking Zoe out into the snow, they revealed their true nature. They valued the appearance of success, Brad's fake wealth over the substance of love. Aaliyah's response teaches us that the ultimate revenge isn't screaming, it's removing your access. It demonstrates that financial literacy and strategic silence are the ultimate armor for a Black woman in a world, and sometimes a family, that underestimates her. She didn't just evict them from a house, she evicted them from her spirit. The lesson is clear. Stop setting yourself on fire to keep people warm who wouldn't even give you a coat in a blizzard. Your table belongs to you, and you have the absolute right to decide who sits at it. Have you ever had to remind your family exactly whose table they were eating at? Share your story of reclaiming your power in the comments below.